Welcome back. We just talked about bridging. Right before that, we talked about all kinds of routing. Well, now it's time to change direction here and talk a little bit about security. And we're going to start talking about security with NSX firewalls. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we want to get into here. First, we're going to talk about segmentation, and then we're going to talk about the distributed firewall, and then we're going to talk about using the distributed firewall just on a VDS, on just as a security only deployment of NSX. And then finally, we're going to talk about gateway firewalls. And we do that because all of these things are really important, right? Firewalls are, in some respects, perhaps considered a foundation of network security, where they simply give us that block, right? That access filter that says you can get from here to there, but not to this other place. And this is going to give us, a big layer of security that we can use. Stay tuned. We've got more cool stuff in security coming up in future series of videos. But here we're going to focus in on NSX segmentation and just kind of talk about the why. What are we doing and why are we doing it? What is segmentation? Why do we think about segmentation? How does this fit into zero trust security? So we look at traditional security challenges, and perhaps we're getting into the Wayback Machine here, but this is a good example of how things, at least at one point, were, where there was a firewall and there was, it just provided a perimeter, and that seemed great. I trusted the things inside the perimeter. I didn't trust things outside the perimeter. The problem with that is that once something bad got from the outside to the inside, then there was no real protection. We couldn't do a whole lot. Well, that has led us, right? That one configuration, that one thought process that we had so long ago has led us up to what we now call zero trust security. And this is what we really want, but this is a pretty significant journey to undertake. And really, zero trust security means trust nothing and verify everything, right? It doesn't matter whether something is inside or outside my perimeter. I still don't trust it. But zero trust security is a far bigger project, if you will, than just throwing up firewalls and doing what we call microsegmentation. That's a piece of it. That's absolutely a piece of it. But I have to worry about my devices and my users and my applications and my data as well as my network to really get zero trust security. So this is just one piece of that larger zero security puzzle. Now, we're going to support that through segmentation, and we have two different flavors, if you will, of segmentation that we might work with. We have macro segmentation, we have micro segmentation. Well, what's the difference? When we look at the words, macro is bigger, micro is smaller. Macro segmentation is something we've actually been doing for a long, long time. This is my traditional security zones, right? My prod zone, my dev zone, my test zone, my PCI zone, things like that. That's macro segmentation. Micro segmentation is doing that same thing, but just on a much, much smaller scale. With NSX and our distributed firewall, that micro segment is the virtual NIC of the virtual machine. So it's a much, much more compact perimeter where we're building boundaries around applications and even around individual pieces of an application inside that application boundary. So it's just subsequently smaller and smaller perimeters. Now, why do we do this? Why do we use segmentation with NSX? Well, because we want to, we need to secure things. This is going to be a big piece of supporting network and transport trust in the context of zero trust security. This is because NSX is all programmatic and automated, this helps us more quickly and rapidly deploy, isolate, and secure applications. In other words, it's just good for us. Plain and simple. This is going to aid our security measures in a plethora of ways. Now, here we talk about benefits, right? And we can look at this. Microsegmentation is going to limit that lateral movement, meaning that my workloads are not going to be able to talk to each other necessarily, and that's not a bad thing. That helps minimize the risk if something is compromised. It also means that less traffic is going to get out of my network, right? We talk about simplification of network traffic flows here. What we're talking about is with the distributed firewall, if I'm blocking the traffic right outside the virtual NIC, well, then the traffic never gets to the wire, right? Traditional firewalls, my traditional physical perimeter devices, if traffic needs to be blocked, well, that's got to go out across the wire, out to the perimeter device. That's just clogging up my network. Here, we're actually simplifying things, simplifying the flows, making sure that the flows on my actual network, on my wires, are meaningful, making that better, right? So, all of these kinds of things are really, really big benefits to NSX, right? Business agility, the fact that this is all automated and programmatically derived, and we can have this stuff built by, my segmentation policies can be built with a cloud management platform, or I can use dynamic groups, and automatically when a virtual machine is deployed, it automatically gets included into a set of groups, which means it's automatically protected. There's all kinds of things all kinds of reasons we want to do segmentation with NSX, right? Now, looks like a really, really easy process, doesn't it? 4-step process. We're showing it off right here. We create our zones, we identify our boundaries, we implement microsegmentation, and then we do further security through context. Except, is it that easy? Is it really that easy? No, it's not. It's not. The process is simple, but it's not easy. So our virtual security zones, that might be relatively simple. We kind of have these things built out today anyway, right? Prod, dev, test, PCI, whatever, our different zones. We know what we have. We need to identify how we're going to build those in the context of NSX. How are we going to define those? Are those going to be, gateway firewalls? How much are my distributed firewalls coming into play? We need to define those things, right? What are my environments? What are my macro segments, to use a term we used earlier. Then I need to identify the application boundaries. Now, we've got tons of applications with tons of different boundaries. This is basically identifying the workloads within the or that make up the virtual machine, or not the virtual machine, the application. And doing this gives me clarity around my application border, so that I can secure access to the application, right? That's what we're doing here we want to be able to secure access to the application. So I want to set up a perimeter around these virtual machines in that container in the diagram. Then I need to implement microsegmentation. So that's going to be, only my users can access my web server, and only on port 443. And my app server can only talk to the middleware on specific ports, and my middleware can only talk to the backend database on certain ports. And we want to limit what can be communicated with inside the application, right? Once we've got that, well, then we secure through context. What does that even mean? We're already secured, right? Securing through context simply means now we're going to add in additional security tools, intrusion detection and prevention, malware prevention, other things like that, on a component by component basis, right? Do I need these things on my middleware, or would maybe my front end web server suffice? Maybe I have different security on my back end database. But this is where we start using different building blocks to further secure, because a firewall does not a secure environment make. It helps with security. It's part of the security strategy, but it doesn't make us secure by default. Adding more tools by context, that's going to help a lot. Now, sounds like a simple 4 steps, right? We may get into a case of our microsegmentation journey becomes sort of an iterative process. We go through and we set our security boundaries, and then we go through again and define our applications and do our basic security with our applications. And then over time, maybe we iterate once more and go through application by application and build out the microsegmentation. And then, and so we may layer this on and just carve this into a higher and higher definition view of network security for our applications. So that's segmentation. That's segmentation with NSX. That's why we're going to do it. That's kind of some of the ideas around zero trust and a high level, I don't know, I want to call it roadmap, a high level picture of how we're going to get there, right? With identifying our environments, our perimeters, and then identifying our applications and walking through that process. So that's what we've got going on. Come back in the next video. We'll start talking about the distributed firewall and how that's going to help. See you there.